All set? Okay. Okay, we're going to start today's meeting for the City of Erie Historic Review Commission. Today is May 6th. Can't believe how quickly that's moving forward.
My gosh.
We'll start with a roll call. Craig Peppers absent currently. She might be here still. Dave Brennan, myself, present. Mark Tannenbaum.
Present.
Melinda Meyer is absent today. And Matthew Falcone.
Present.
And Jason Wazorek and Kathy Rosdick are also not, they're not here, absent. Next item on the agenda is the public comment. I don't think has anyone signed up to speak today?
Nothing.
Okay. And there's no one filling the room, so I guess we don't have anyone for our public comment today. Next on the agenda is the approval of past meeting minutes. Did everybody get a chance to look at the meeting minutes? Any questions or issues or anything that needs changed or anything like that? Good. Would someone make a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I move that we approve our minutes from April 1st, 2024.
I second that.
Second. Mark seconds. Real quick, is anyone taking meeting
I'll take
minutes?
notes if you want me to.
Because I know Melinda's, of course, she's not here. So just looking out loud or looking to see if anyone's taking notes.
Matthew Elder.
Yes.
Okay, so the meeting minutes are passed. So our next item on the agenda is we have old business, and the first item is the update to the citywide historic resources survey, the RFP and project timeline. Heather, you're going to discuss that?
Yep.
If I may, we should still do a roll call vote. I know there's only the three of us, but on the meeting minutes motion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. A roll call, a vote for the meeting minutes. Those in favor of approval?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and it passes. We'll go to old business then, and start with the citywide historic resources survey.
Great. Thank you, Dave. So last month we published the RFP and the notice of the RFP that was listed with the local media pertaining to the citywide historic resources survey. Proposals are due by May 23rd. I know that screen is a little bit difficult to see up there, but I did attach the full RFP, which is about a 13 or 16 page document and goes through the whole structure of the process. We felt that it would be pertinent to just sort of go back to the main goals of the project. And if the Zoom wants to cooperate, the four main goals of this project are to identify important historic and cultural resources in the city, to identify historic resources and structures missing from the existing inventories, inventory significant cultural resources related to Erie's diverse heritage, and also to use community outreach as a way to uncover cultural, heritage, and history of the city's neighborhood, and to promote and educate the public on the importance of historic preservation. So, in line with the recently published Historic Preservation Plan, the Citywide Historic Resources Survey, we anticipate will begin at some point this spring or summer. It's divided into phases. The budget is listed. The budget is $112,500 for this. There are 3 phases for the project. The phases are partially based on community outreach as well as physical location within the city, and that is outlined according to this map on page 5. So we just thought it would be advantageous for the Historic Review Commission to see this again, just as a reminder of what is currently out there in RFP format that we will be looking at later this month. We will be seeing those come in by or on May 23rd. So just sort of an update about that, really more than anything else. Jackie, is there anything else on this one?
I did want to just mention that Heather not only posted it on the City of Erie's website, but she and you provided Bill some suggestions in terms of regional and national sites. I think you also were able to capture some.
Yep, there's
some consultants that really, that are more focused in this realm. So it was broad-based.
It was. We published it to, I think, 10 sites. So regional, state, American Planning Association websites, as well as the National Landscape Architect site and the National Planning site. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but yes, we, like Jackie said, we did publish it regionally and nationally, in addition to the typical newspaper publishing of the RFP. So really more than anything, just an overview of where we're at with that. But it will be happening pretty quickly. I mean, the first deadline is slated for September, and that's for community engagement. So we anticipate that much of that will be happening this summer.
How much interest have you had? Has there been phone calls? Just curious how many people are interested, because of course the more the better.
5 or 6 firms. I've
Okay.
had about 5 or 6 firms reach out so far. I would say they're regional firms, although some are from the Midwest, and some are Atlantic, states, or much closer to the Atlantic. So yeah, and very high caliber firms that are inquiring. So, yeah, that's a great question. I anticipate we'll be getting more questions this week. I feel like this week being the first full week of May, maybe some of the sites are updating their web pages and so on and so forth for the month, and that maybe this will be a really, really hot week for people inquiring about the RFP. So.
Is there an anticipated addendum or anything with any questions, or I'm just curious because you know to look in if they ask you a lot of questions.
I guess we attached at the end of this. I guess at this point we did not publish an addendum. I've been answering any questions in a general format, nothing specific, and referring them back to sections within the RFP. It is a very large document. It is 14 pages. At the end of it here, we attached an appendix that lists out 5 or 6 resources. So it is a lot for the firms to be going through in understanding what we're asking. So I might think about that and put together some anticipated.
Yeah, just so everyone's hearing the same. And again, I respond to a lot of RFPs, so typically if it's apples to apples, you're hearing the same information as someone else's. It's a good thing.
Oh, great.
Dave, do you mean like an FAQ kind of sheet?
It would, no, like if there's a certain amount of question keeps coming up again, typically you put out an addendum that just says this question, this question has been asked, and so here's the answer, so everyone sees it.
Okay.
Otherwise, you have to call to ask, and you don't know the same information that another bidder is.
It just
Right.
takes your time.
Right. Correct. And
Yeah.
I have been selective in referring them back to the RFP and then just answering general questions. The questions have been different so far, except for 2 that were sort of similar but not exactly the same question.
Okay.
So, but that's great information.
Yeah, and you're going to narrow it down and then maybe present like something to the commission and just say, here's the for your review. Here's the highest rated bidder or whatever. Okay.
Yes, and there's a selection criteria on this page if I can zoom in. So we will be narrowing it down. And I think this section right here changes to the request for proposals. I think that covers what you were discussing a minute ago.
Yeah.
So if we do add like kind of like an FAQ or just an addendum, that would fall within this section. But this goes through the criteria for selection in terms of going through the results
Great.
and their responses.
Okay, any other items, Heather, you want to point out regarding this item? RFP?
I don't think so. Just wanted to provide an update because that's a pretty big deal, and that'll be a nice document and data collection for us and new understanding of the conditions that exist in the city that we haven't had for, well, ever cohesively perhaps, and not for several years in other formats.
So these firms would then compile the data that we're looking for?
Yes. So
That's
these
what this is all about.
These firms would actually be physically walking. They would be the boots on the ground and surveying the anticipated 30,000 properties within the city of Erie.
Mhm. And do they hire local people to assist them? I mean, my gosh.
So as a part of the submittal package, the responding consultants would, they're required to provide name, role, related, applicable experience with these things. So they are to name all of the people that are on their team. But they could be including someone locally if that person knew that they were applying and they conjoined to apply for it as a consultancy group. But going back to your original question,
Right.
They are the boots on the ground. They are physically surveying the entire city of Erie within those map guidelines on
Okay.
page 5 right there.
This is what you sent us, right? Right.
Yep. And then we are working with the state Historic Preservation Office to meet their criteria in how that data needs to be collected, how it needs to be inputted into the state site, because roughly half of this survey is state funded. So we're not paying for this survey in a holistic way. We're only paying for a portion of it because through Keystone and CLG, certified local government monies that we earned through grants and grant monies, we're paying for maybe half, and the state is paying for the other half. So it really behooves us to know this information, and it behooves the state. So the state wants to see the information in a specific way, and it will be digitized, but that's completely up to the consultant. That's a part of that very large sum that is a part of this contract.
What was that sum again? For the record?
112,500.
Yeah.
112,500.
And then it's broken down by phase. So if I can zoom in, that first phase is due by September 30th.
Right.
And that's where the consultancy group would be engaging and meeting with neighborhoods and communities in each of those 6 allocated neighborhoods in the city. And we anticipate a crowdsourcing effort for that, so that we can have information collected in a broad way. In case someone can't attend the meeting, there might be an online component such that this neighborhood or this neighbor could give their input. And we anticipate that there's information, that there are places, sites, objects, buildings, structures, landmarks, landscapes that we're maybe not even aware of. And those will be discussed at those points. As it stands, the survey is from the ground up. So it's what's existing. So if there's something somewhere that is not visible from the ground up, it is not as much a consideration or the central focus of this project or initiative, but might be a subsequent project or study for the city that we could delve into with funding for those types of things.
'Cause it, just thinking, it just seems so locally intensive
Yes.
That to have somebody come in from someplace else to do it here, the expense of just them staying here would eat up, to me, a big chunk of the budget, as opposed to gathering the data if it was some organization that was here. But but remember we tried before, and there wasn't the skill set here. And that's, I think there's the rub, right?
It's a balance, and we might get a consulting firm that is teaming up with a local architecture firm or a local planner or local people, right?
Yes.
Because they could certainly be a part of that consultancy team. So, Mark, you're
There's boots
absolutely
on the
right on
ground.
that. Right. I would anticipate that it probably will be firms within a 4 or 5 hours drive that maybe can come for weeks at a time. But I could be surprised on that. So, but it is a large chunk of money. It's a lot of work in the field. It's a lot of reporting and data input and dialogue with the state. And it's also kind of like a building of local pride, so that we're aware of what we even have to begin with in a current state.
And it's sort of a building of local trust, remember when we tried to do some of the other things and it was really kind of prickly, the experience was prickly? I would, it takes a process to get past that, especially if you're not from here, and I know that sounds very parochial. I always like to joke that Erie is very parochial and proud of it, and it's just kind of our nature. And I would hate to see a standoffish situation where we then couldn't gather the data that we wanted, and therefore, or it would take so much more time to acquire that person-to-person relationship that I think Erie thrives on.
They're trained and they'll
just
train
do
people
it.
do it.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
absolutely. And the nice thing about this is that, this does meet the criteria for something that was laid out in the Historic Preservation Plan, one of the first initiatives in the back part of the document, which is conduct a full citywide historic resources survey. So this is one of those first major steps towards meeting a major historic preservation plan and citywide goal of knowing our resources, which is exciting because I think it will lead to future opportunities, which I think you're speaking to today.
Because you want to build on that
Yes.
then,
Yes.
This has to be almost the first step, oddly enough.
So just kind of a status update on that. That is one of the documents within that enormous packet that was sent last week out. So all of the details are in that, but it is thick reading. It's a big document. So if you have any questions or ideas for when we get to the point of consideration with the firms, or when we get into the process itself, these meetings would be a great time for that. One component of the process is that Jackie, I think I enlisted me, but Jackie and our planning department will be a big part of this. So I will be in the sessions and in the meetings so that I'm fully aware of what's going on, and I'll be able to give updates as to where the process stands for the HRC. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Good. Okay. Keep moving forward. You want to talk about the CLG mini grant, Heather? Is that something you want to do? Just update?
Yes, that would be great. So I might pass this to, first of all, maybe introduce Bill Callahan. If for those of you that don't know him, he's visiting from the state and he's our Western coordinator. I'm totally messing up your title, Bill. Sorry.
We all know
I
him anyways.
can rarely remember my entire title either. It's way too long and complicated.
I'm thinking that maybe Bill is the best person to give us sort of an overview of just an update on the design guidelines, which are the mini grant, and then the HRC specific group training, and that was through a scholarship. So, Bill, would you be comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah,
great.
Thanks, Heather.
And feel free to move the mic.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I should probably do that. Just a brief comments on the discussion about the survey project. Mark, your point about firms coming from out of town is very well taken. Most of these firms, this is what they do. So they're accustomed to coming to communities where they're not from and engaging public a lot. They are often teams of consultants, and many of them will actually engage local folks to help with the public engagement part especially. But it'll also be up to you, the HRC.
Right, to bring the right
help them with
people,
that.
yeah.
Right. The HRC, the expectation would be the HRC helps the consultant get out into the community as appropriately as possible. So that's and in terms of cost, they'll send in a budget, and part of the review process is if they're spending 3/4 of their budget on travel, that's probably not the firm you want to hire. So there's ways to you make a really good point, but there are ways to kind of work through all that. Heather, I'm sorry. The RFP is due.
Results are due 3:00 May 23rd.
And then, so in your anticipated contract date is?
Jackie, do you remember what we said that for? I don't have that off the top of my head
Okay.
without looking at the
Okay.
file.
I was just trying to get in my, because I can help with this in any way you see fit in terms of anything that you're doing. So I'm just trying to get in my head what you're. It's okay.
I'll
Don't
pull
worry
up a
about that.
calendar. If that, a small calendar? Never mind. I was going to try to pull up a calendar, but it's not a big calendar.
So probably no less than 30 days from I would guess, from when it's due. So.
That's typically what we've done.
So they give you 4 months. Okay, so that's Okay, good.
And the first phase isn't due until the end of September.
Right. So that's
Yeah.
Okay, good. So sure. So okay. I'll just forgive me the risk of sounding pedantic. Let me just real quick. So I'm Bill. I'm with the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm based in Pittsburgh. I'm not out of Harrisburg. I know all you, so I know you know all this. But I do want to real quickly. Erie is a certified local government, which is a national park service program where we have an intergovernmental agreement between the Park Service, my office, and the City of Erie to help to assist in the management of Erie's historic preservation program, and that comes in the way of both technical assistance and guidance, and also funding. And I can never remember, Heather. You might have to help me with here. We actually have 3 of our grants in the survey project.
Yes.
I think one is CLG, and 2 are Keystone. Okay.
Yep.
So we do have CLG money in the survey project, and we have Erie now has had two other successful CLG grant projects that have been funded. There are 2, soon to be only 1, because we realize we haven't split up too much. But right now we have 2. So those are CLG project grants that are awarded on an annual basis. The next one will come around probably in October. The applications will be due sometime in January. So those are the grants that are up to $25,000 with only a 10% match on the city's part required. But we also administer a training grant and a mini grant program. The mini grants for smaller scale projects that might need immediate assistance. Training, same thing, kind of obvious definition of that. And they're awarded on a rolling basis. And Heather applied for both a training grant and a mini grant in March,
Yes.
I think.
Yep.
We usually try to turn these around much more quickly, but we have awarded the City of Erie, I think it's a $5,000 training grant and is it a $10,000 mini grant?
I think so.
Okay, so those have both been awarded. You should be getting very shortly the
Great.
paperwork on this.
Great.
I'll start with the mini grant first. The application was first set because I know the HRC has asked on several occasions to develop Erie-specific design guidelines, and that's what the application was for. $10,000 won't cover it. It's at best a third, probably a quarter, not enough. But what it can do, and we've talked about this, and we'll have to massage how we do this, is design guidelines will require a significant amount of public engagement, public education, public input. For $10,000, we could put together a pretty robust public engagement program leading into a design guideline. The question is, though, the city's doing a lot of public engagement stuff these days, and what's the most appropriate way to go about this? We can figure all that out. Whatever works for the city is what we'll do. But we've got that. We're going to have that $10,000 to play around with for the next 3 years. So it doesn't. I mean, it's something that we can do over time. So that we'll figure that out. The other opportunity is something, again, the HRC has made it clear. I think you've already been provided training by the National Association of Preservation Commissions previously, a couple of years ago maybe. The second is we'll do NAPC training here again. We'll bring them in again to work on, and we'll work on what specific. NAPC is really, really good at tailoring their trainings for whatever the HRC wants or needs. So they have very specific kind of training modules, but they're very good at, if we see a couple of things, 2 things in one module and 2 things in another module, we can blend those together, and they can bring people in, and they come from all over the country to come in and do training. So we'll work on that together to figure out what the most appropriate way is, and I think I'm actually kind of excited about this. I was not aware that we could even do this, but Elizabeth Rara, who some of you know, is actually working with NAPC to see if we could become the third-party grant administrator for this, which would cut down a lot on Heather's paperwork for grant management, because we would be doing all the paperwork. We would contract with NAPC and bring them in to do the training here. So we would be the actual grantor directly to the consultant, and it also cut out any. The 10% match is a wash because of administration, but it would cut back a lot on the paperwork. It also would make it a lot. All of our grants, all of them are reimbursable, so the city wouldn't have to actually pay NAPC and then wait for us, the Commonwealth, to pay you back, because we would be writing the check to NAPC. That's something my boss just kind of came up with at the end of the week last week. It's not finalized. I'm hoping we get word on that within days, and we get that set up, and we can probably do this as soon as we can.
Great.
I'm thinking.
Great. Okay, so we'll stay in dialogue on the status of the second one, the scholarship, which pertains to our immediate group, and we'll figure out kind of dates and the flexibility and all of those.
And that's the scholarship for the training.
Correct.
Yes, yep, and that's for us, our people, our group. So, great. If we could stay in dialogue
Yes.
as
We're gonna have
that
to.
unfolds,
Yes,
and get that
absolutely.
set up sooner rather than later.
Yes.
I know we would all benefit in some way for the 4. And I think that we went through a process it would have been 2 months ago in March, where we, as a group, sort of took a survey on which topics would be preferred. And I think we submitted those with the application, although if those needed to be...
I was laying on a couch at the time, so I didn't actually see the application.
So I'll be sure to revisit those and check and make sure that we get the right
broke my
trainings. So
I was hoping that it wasn't a knee replacement.
No, ankle replacement, essentially.
So thank you, Bill, for providing that. I felt that Bill was the right person to be speaking to these rather than me giving just a blanket overview on them.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it.
And just to go back to the design guidelines.
Good, I was going to go back to that anyway.
So design guidelines, the CLG mini grant, which is a larger amount of money because it encompasses and applies to perhaps more people.
And how much
in a
was that
sense.
grant, please, Heather?
I would have to check on that.
Okay.
Do you
It's a
mind?
$10,000 max, but I'm not sure I ever knew how much
I
you
want to
actually
say it's
applied
either
for.
5 or 10. I didn't think to bring that sheet with me downstairs.
It's fine. I'll keep it out.
I think it is 10 now that you mention it. Design guidelines are used in cities and usually specific to certain districts, and those work in conjunction with things like zoning ordinance, code, such that there's a visual and there is descriptive and technical and supplemental packet of things that kind of stand as a supportive to all of the code and the ordinances. So, like, I reached out to a local city recently, and had dialogue back and forth with that local city that has some superb local design guidelines, like superb from a historic preservation standpoint. I was really impressed, and I've been looking at a lot of different cities' design guidelines. So, like Bill said, we do have some monies towards them, but $10,000 would not get us to where we would want them to be for a city the size and diverse as Erie is. So it sounds like we'll work on that for how we can make that number more doable, so that it's a document we're proud of, and that's a document that works and does what it needs to do. So.
What number are you thinking, Heather, for that investment?
Bill, what are you thinking, 40, 50?
That's actually something we should probably talk about, because it's going to be up to the city and the HRC, which is the same thing, but how you want to approach this, because there are, and we help pay for these too, the Erie Downtown Partnership has a set of really nice design guidelines for
More commercial.
Lower State Street.
Right, that's
which are quite good. Very imaginative, very clear, well illustrated. I wish I could remember who did them now.
Prospectus.
That's who it was. Thank you. You went to meetings, didn't you?
No. I was part of the committee.
Remember now. So there may be a way, for example, for the HRC to consider adopting, in whole or in part, those guidelines for designated historic properties that are commercial in nature, because they are quite good, and they would be good for that kind of property type. Now, two things that you could do then when we do full-scale citywide design guidelines, then you would need primarily residential guidelines, which are, by their nature, very different from commercial guidelines, like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Commercial is treated differently than residential. It's a very different prospect talking about somebody's house than their business or their investment property. It's just very different on a number of different levels. Those guidelines could also then, we could develop, we would understand by then whether or not there's need for some appendices for other kinds of commercial properties that might not be covered by the downtown partnerships guidelines. Mm-hmm. So we could incorporate, but they wouldn't be as costly or as extensive if the HRC were to simply consider using the downtown partnerships guidelines for those kinds of reviews. Obviously, you probably want to talk to the downtown partnership about that. I don't know why they would object to it, but it's not. Anyway, you know what I mean.
But that's just when there's 6 blocks or whatever that is, right? I mean, I was in a meeting with Emily this morning. I don't think
I think it's more than 6 blocks. They cover.
It goes up to probably like 14th Street.
Oh, does it really? It goes up to it goes up to the bridge.
They're pretty extensive.
But
But not beyond.
Yeah.
that is a great suggestion, and that's something maybe we can look at in forthcoming months, just as a group. If we have a slower month or something with less topics, maybe we can even review that as a committee.
And you wouldn't be, even though those are the downtown partnerships guidelines for their
Yes.
specified area of where they operate, you wouldn't have to look at them that way. You could adopt them as a more general, this is how we're going to look at commercial properties, historic commercial properties. And there may be, we might learn that there's some gaps, some places, I don't know. The Federal Hill buildings are very different from State Street, So, I mean, there may be a larger scale set of design guidelines might want to make some accommodations for. I just totally made that up. I don't know.
So maybe an additive thing rather than duplicating.
Correct.
Something we have just for the sake of,
Correct. It would make them much less. It would also make them more consistent because, as I say, residential design guidelines and commercial design guidelines are just, even in tone, are gonna be very different.
I know they're
Um,
trying to get a guy, the 8th Street corridor, West 8th Street, where that has a really business, commercial, residential component. I know we're looking at changing that to two-way or one-way, in certain spots. But that's almost its own little ethos, that little area, as compared to downtown,
Mhm,
which
sure.
it's different
Sure.
than the
Right,
vibe that you
right.
get when you're like by Avanti's and you have those storefronts that are right there. You know what I mean? As opposed to what's happening downtown.
And there's a lot of ways to look at this too. I mean, again, with their permission, you might be able to just simply extrapolate, take, some of that out and put it in a different, there's a lot of ways that we could do that, but you do have a good set of local design guidelines based on Erie properties, that the HRC could look at. You've also got the Secretary of Interior standards that you can look at right now. All of these are based on the Secretary's rehab standards. All of them are. Really,
Bill,
if
I
we're
have
helping
a,
pay for them, it should be.
I have a question.
Sure.
Would you recommend adopting because we've had similar discussions about this before, but would you recommend adopting those downtown partnership guidelines first? Like having a study session with council and planning commission, having them understand the approach, maybe, what you mentioned, and then going through this engagement process with the $10,000, applying for another grant, and then adopting a residential guideline, or could you see that being done all at once?
I think an incremental approach, like you just described, I think would have a lot of benefits. I think I'd want to take another look at the downtown guidelines, and I think the HRC would want to too. But I think that would be a good way to move ahead. One of the biggest fears that people have is what's this going to look like? And there's a common misperception that what this is going to look like is I'm going to make my house look like a museum. And one of the downtown, the State Street corridors guidelines make it clear that's not what it's all about. It's all about maintaining a sense of place, maintaining historic character, maintaining those things that make Erie what it is physically, and not something that's proscriptive or retrograde in terms of the approach, because you don't want to make there is under any circumstance any reason to make people go back, because another common misperception, go back to something that no longer exists, and the guidelines make that very clear. So I think that what you just described, Jackie, would be a good way to move ahead.
Yeah, and I'd also recommend with the HRC to have either a working session or even during the meeting to have maybe Erie, Emily Fedko come, or even a representative from Prospectus come and talk to those guidelines, so that, you can read them, but sometimes talking through them and understanding them, having somebody who was on, conducting the plan might help a little bit, or managing the plan.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, that would help me, I know, because it is a very nice document, but applying it is a different
Very much
story.
so. Very much so.
So once I hear more from the state, once I hear back from the state, we can put it in a bit more of a formal concept for how we're going to move forward with it.
Sure.
And I like the sound of all of this. The citywide historic resources survey is definitely a major priority this month for our department and for my role. But the design guidelines are certainly something that we want to pick up with, and soon, I would think within the next couple of months, pick up on the conversation. And I'll look at what Emily sends or has sent, if maybe she sent that today even or something. So sounds like I'll be in touch with you on how we move forward with that, and then I'll pass that information along to the HRC, and we can maybe then talk about how we're going to move forward with it.
And I think you said you're going to talk to Emily also and just kind of present that concept to her.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We certainly can.
So I definitely want to talk to her before I talk to the consultant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And first I'll look at the paperwork back from the state. We still haven't formally heard back on it yet. So once I get an a chance to look at that, yes, meet with Emily first and see what her thoughts might be on that.
Yep.
So that's great.
Sounds
Two real
good.
quick things to consider, and I'll be quiet. Was interpreting design guidelines one of the HRC's desires in terms of training? Was that one of the training?
I remember on the list, I'm not sure if we chose it as our top 3 or not.
Okay.
Bring that.
Okay, doesn't matter. I mean, the
Excuse me.
process that Jackie just, having NAPC come in here and using those design guidelines
Okay.
as the training tool
Mm,
for the HRC is something that could,
that's a good idea.
that would give them something besides the much broader Secretary of the Interior standards to focus on and help the HRC through how to interpret design guidelines and implement them
Okay.
with using a real example. Something that's really is here.
I think that might have been one of the ones that was chosen. I feel like maybe Matthew even had provided input on that one. So I feel like that one, or else it was the process one that you'd submitted. But that sounds like a great idea, though. So I wrote that down.
And you can, a process training is essential. That's probably something every HRC should do like every couple of years, no matter what.
Mhm.
Just to, okay, how are we doing? What do we need to fine tune? What are we not doing? There is an annual limit the Park Service puts on us to how much money we can give any given CLG within any given fiscal year, but you're a long way from that. So we could actually if this, I don't want to give you more to do, but we could maybe come up with another training grant to bring them in and do like a 2-day session or a full day, one morning and one afternoon. So there's a lot of ways we can skin this cat.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for
Thanks for
speaking
having me.
to both the mini grant and the scholarships. It's great to have a representative from the state and from the speaking body that gives us the opportunities to do much of what we do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate your time. Next item on the agenda is the modification to the forms, historic nomination form, historic overlay district nomination form, application for certificate of appropriateness and certificate of appropriateness. I don't know if Matthew, you should be the team?
Yeah, I can. We did have an opportunity to meet earlier today and work through all 4 of these forms. Top priority for us was kind of twofold: ensuring that the language that's present on these forms is reflected in, or reflective of, rather, that which is in our zoning ordinance. So we were able to make, I think, tremendous progress towards that, so that there's clarity in language. And we also looked at this through the lens of the applicant and what would be easiest and most accessible for all. I think we have a lot of revisions to the forms that we had proposed. And so what I think I'd like to do today is just conclude the briefing with the expectation that when we have our June session, these 4 forms will be before us for ratification. And we will send them out kind of well in advance, so each commissioner has an opportunity to read through and make any kind of suggestions that they would like. I don't know, Ed, Heather, or Jack, is there anything else that you'd like to? Okay.
Great, Matthew. Thanks for looking at the forms and for going through it and kind of leading the group then. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, any questions or at the forms? Mark, I don't know if there's any other questions or any other questions. You're good. Next on the agenda is the Historic Building Improvement Grant between HRC and RACE.
Great. Thanks, Dave. So I'll just give an update, and then Jackie can speak to the second part of this. So the Historic Building Improvement Grant from 22 or 23, 22 to 23 and 23 to the current year, was between the Redevelopment Authority and the HRC in much of the process. We currently have projects that are soon to be closed out. So we met with the Redevelopment Authority last week, Jackie and I, and we discussed sort of the protocol and the steps needed to properly meet with the existing approved applicants from last year prior to the fall who hadn't yet had their project completed. So it was explained that I'll be going out to meet with the owner and inspect the property. I will be doing the completion worksheets, mailing any needed extension forms if needed, although we are not allocating for that up front by any means. But that is available if needed. And just sort of putting the whole packet through the process in a cohesive, uniform way where it only goes through one person, and I'll be inputting that data, handing the final signed application, sending it to the redevelopment authority for the final check and reimbursement back to the applying city resident. So as it stands, I think there's maybe 20 or 25 that still need to be inspected, maybe if that. Originally, I believe there were about 45 applicants originally. I handed Jackie the spreadsheet. I don't have the number in front of me. Originally, there were quite a few projects that were approved from last year's process. And I went through all of the approved applications. I went through all of the applications on hold, every single paper folder I went through over the past couple of weeks to understand the status of them, type of project, what part of the process they're in. So we're caught up on that information, and we're now making the transition where Race had previously been doing the inspections. It's going to come back to the Historic Preservation Plan role to do the inspections.
Are there about 24 still pending, you said, out of 45 approved?
Not pending inspection and closeout. Yes, not application.
Right, yes.
Yes. But I would have to double check that number. I didn't bring that sheet down with me.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Maybe there's not that many. I'm counting 17 or 18, although 2 people I need to follow up on.
Okay.
So maybe it's
I said
a little
approximately
less than
20.
that. Thanks. Yeah. So with that said, it's going to be a busy month, but the good news is that a lot of these projects that had not been able to be completed due to winter weather and so on and so forth are probably in full swing right now with their associated contractors and work team, or soon will be, and we'll have some nice projects throughout the city that hopefully are in line with the originating goal of the monies. So I just wanted to provide a status update on that part of the project. I also should say that roughly half of the projects have inspections due before August, and the other half have inspections due August to the end of November. So work really needs to be done by the end of November. Otherwise, they're going to have a pretty important conversation with me about what we're going to do. So that's kind of the short and long of it. Jackie, there's this.
Is it possible, I mean, I know this sounds, we're always trying to reach out to the public, but is there a way to, on a website or some way to communicate to the general public a before and after situation where they can say, where we can say, this is what this board has overseen and it's improved the community here, 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 and here, and this is what it was and this is what it is now, and to be able to put some kind of accountable vision out there to the public that would then encourage additional future asks and support for all this other stuff that we're doing. I think if you're constantly reaching out and showing how things worked out, although that's a lot of work, you know, to take the photographs and design, you know, write all that up, put it out there someplace. That's someone getting paid to do a fair amount of work. But I think it would benefit us in the long run to do that, particularly when we're going to send people out in the community, you know, these neighborhoods, and try to have these interviews. You know, we should at least have some in your neighborhood. This already worked, and this is what we're talking about. Not this, but this. And I think fear is out there of like what we came across that people were afraid of what this might mean to them. And we're saying, no, this is what it means. And I think that might be a really good PR.
There is an article actually coming out.
There you go. But that would maybe the Erie Reader would. This might be a really good Erie Reader article, or
Yeah.
Erie Times News article.
Yeah, Kevin Flowers reached out to the department, and
He's great.
Heather provided him with a lot of information in regards primarily to the RFP. But the hope is to have our dashboard for not only the locally designated resources, but also to showcase some of those projects out of the grant program.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be all of them.
And do some storytelling around that, which is
Sure.
what, and it's tied to ARP money as well.
Right.
So I thought that, yeah, we need to circle back with Aaron to kind of figure out where we can do some of that.
Because there was some negative feeling out here in the
Oh,
public about it, and I think one of the
Sure.
ways to dispel that is to be transparent
Um,
and wave a positive flag. I mean, many of these are great.
Absolutely. I should add too that I did have a couple of meetings face to face as well as on the phone with applicants that were on hold and weren't approved originally for a project, or for whatever reason did not have a forwarding address at the property and did not receive the letter mailed in January that the project had closed. I made those very difficult phone calls and had those face-to-face conversations with those residents in Erie. So I'm happy to have conversations with the public. I'm
Right.
happy to sort of like take that burden forward and to kind of flip that coin, because flipping the page
Right.
is the only way that we can make progress, and examining what occurred in the past, but not seeing that as a burden in itself and keeping it that way, but using it as a motivation for a better usage of process and time. So,
Yes, but to celebrate our victories is a good thing.
sure. And maybe even an associated map that pinpoints projects throughout
Yes.
the city. I could see something like that happening. That probably won't happen this month, but I definitely think that would be a great thing that would speak towards something like you're describing.
It might be a great intern job for somebody.
There
I don't
you
know.
go.
I don't know how to do this.
Well, we should have before and after pictures.
Right.
So
Because
it
they did bring
actually-
us before pictures. We
Right,
have them.
and we have descriptions of projects
Right.
from the grant, so it's a matter of
Putting it
compiling
together,
it and
sure.
really giving it to our GIS administrator, and she can create a nice map. And you can hover over the point
Yeah.
and
I think that'd
everything
be
can
great.
pop up. But,
That's a good
yeah,
idea.
I
This
think
helps
that's a
with
good
everything
point.
that we're doing future, everything that Bill's talking about, all this other grant, all this other programming. I mean, it has to build on successes and positive communication and positive outlay of resources, that, you're getting bang for your buck, you're getting a return on your investment, the community's improving.
Right.
Individual homeowners are getting benefited, from the work, the funds that were provided, that we're appropriately spending ARP money.
Can I ask you a question? I love this idea a lot, but I want to ask, and I know it's public money, so these are publicly accessible awards, but for this what you're talking about here, did the applicant sign a release to use their property or their project?
Probably
like
not.
social
That
media
could be a
photography.
part of it. That would be something that I, as project manager, would probably get to.
That's a good
Yes,
idea.
that's
That
a
should be in
great
the form.
point. Yes,
Good
from
point,
a
Bill.
technical and
Good-
and
that's
what-
for sure.
yes. That
You always
yeah.
forget that release.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Great
big
point.
deal.
Okay. Is there anything else with that discussion? Jackie, did you?
I
A
just
follow-up?
want, yes, I was going to speak to the grant, the remaining funds. So just to recap, this was a grant given, an American Rescue Plan grant given to the Redevelopment Authority of $841,500. And the program was called, in the contract is historic, I think it's residential and small business preservation grant program. That's what is in their contract. From what was expended of that amount was, I'm sorry, not expended, but what's been approved is $585,999.57. The amount remaining in this account is $254,000.43. We've had 2 discussions with the Redevelopment Authority in regards to what we plan to do with the remaining funds. There is a Redevelopment Authority meeting coming up, I think it's in May 13th, where we would like to take some information and possible some ideas, or to be able to recommend some how we can use this or obligate this money, because they're under a deadline of December 31st, 2024 to obligate these funds and then expend them by December 31st, 2026. That's based on the ARP guidelines. So, and I don't know if we can decide this today, but we do need to start making some decisions and just having discussions around what potentially could be done with the remaining funds. So we spoke with Aaron. Aaron is aware that we have interest in, talking to the HRC and coming up with recommendations. He's aware that, we've asked about what the remaining balance is and that type of thing. So he knows that we'd still like to dedicate this to its purpose, original intention, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank
have
you
some-
for that update.
Oh.
No, that's wonderful. I'm wondering if Mr. Chair, you entertain a motion. It sounds like we need a special meeting to talk about that. So I would move that we have a special meeting of the HRC, specifically to discuss the remaining funds for the Historic Building Improvement Grant from 2023.
Okay. Mark, everyone heard the motion clearly?
Let's
Is
do it
there-
again. So the request for a special meeting.
Yes, to talk exclusively to talk about the remaining funds from the Historic Building Improvement Grant.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Mark seconds that motion. And those opposed, or those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Hearing none,
Aye.
the motion passes.
And we're going to just set a date on that in the future?
The sooner
Can
the
we be
better.
flexible?
We can-
Yeah,
Sooner the
exactly.
better, but we'll be
I'll
flexible.
send-
Let's bang some emails around and.
Well, the meeting is on May 13th for the Redevelopment Authority, so
Is that right?
it would have to be rather quickly, because that's next week.
Next Monday.
Next Monday.
That sounds right.
Mhm.
So, I don't know if you want to pull up a schedule and look at.
Do it now.
I don't know if, possibly this Friday might work, or Thursday or Friday. I know we're cutting it a little short.
May I suggest that we send a poll out to the commissioners with a few dates?
Mhm.
I would say
and
Friday
times?
morning is good for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Would you
make
like
sure
me to
that the,
coordinate that?
sorry?
Would you like me to coordinate, send an email out?
Yes, please.
Okay.
To ensure that they have the opportunity as well.
Sure.
To
Since we're
weigh in with their
missing
schedules.
a couple.
Yep.
That's good.
And maybe tentatively for, this
And if we
very
have to-
aggressive timeframe, but Friday sounds like a,
If we have to have somebody Zoom in, we can accommodate that too. So if you have to Zoom in, it's not an issue.
great.
I will send that email out by tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Does anybody take a little poll right now? Because I have
Yeah.
an 8:30 to 9:30 that are noon.
Which day?
It's
On
this Friday, as
Friday?
you noted.
And these are available or not available?
I'm available anytime from 9:30 to noon.
Could we say 10 o'clock is good for me? If it's good for you, David.
Me as well.
I can't do that. Sorry.
That's all right.
I could do 11.
I could do 11.
Dave?
It
I
would
could do
be-
11, but I just have to leave.
It's quick, right, because
So
it's
we'll have a
Can we do
very
it?
good meeting.
Okay.
10:30, 11 o'clock.
11, just
No
Yeah.
pressure.
And
Yeah.
where?
You might have to have a Zoom link if my link is-
Yeah. I'm just thinking about our conference room versus caucus conference room. Do we need a more private space? I don't think so. I think our conference room, we can probably do it up in the fourth floor.
Fourth floor?
Yeah.
Fine.
So
No.
an email, we'll send that after the meeting today.
Heather, you'll send that out?
Friday at 11. Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
That's great.
sounds good.
PACA did apply for some funds for windows on our 5th floor. I'm just, full disclosure, which they're discussing at this upcoming redevelopment meeting. We already did this. 5 years ago, we got some funding for the facade of our building. As you know, it's a 5-year contract agreement that should you sell the building within that 5-year period of time, you owe a certain percentage of that money, 20%. You earn 20% every year for 5 years. Last month, we passed our 5th year, so we are 100% in possession of that. We have no intention of selling the building. The rules are that our 5th floor and 4th floor is visible from the main street, completely visible on all sides, that we are applying for. The remaining east, west, and one in the south, windows to match the existing windows that we already have put in the front of the building. And they would be the bronze 1/1 windows that we have. But there are 40 of them, and they're expensive. They're made locally and they're installed locally. But I did want to be honest about the fact that we have applied for that grant already.
Your window sashes are bronze?
I'm sorry?
Did your window sashes are bronze?
Well, the outside edging, it's not like a white vinyl window, but, they're bronze
Yeah.
colored.
Colored.
They're not made out of bronze. That'd be nice. But
That'd be really
I was going to
expensive.
say
Yeah.
that would be something
No,
I haven't
they're-
seen
and
before.
they
but-
match our copper downspouts.
Yeah.
No, they're bronze in color. They have argon glass. It has to do with heat retention and the cost of our building heating and cooling is crazy, and we're trying to get a grip on that. These windows are currently just half of them are made out of wood with holes in them. Other half are broken, shattered windows. We're doing our best, and the fact that up until this point we have improved every single floor from the ground up, and the 5th floor is our next phase. Without the windows, which is the middle, the first thing to do, we can't build out and then make that space more available to more artists and entrepreneurs and more useful to the community without windows.
And Mark, if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
when you say applied, did
Yes.
you apply as if under this grant program?
I don't know where the money was coming from, but I did meet with Aaron on a couple of occasions, and I did give him a lengthy, not lengthy, 3-page he asked for a 3-page request of like, to lay it all out, and the paperwork from the contractors and the agreement to be prevailing wage.
Okay.
So all of that, Constantine Bible has installed all of those windows for us. They are union shop, I think, and so they pay prevailing wage. That's why it's so expensive.
Jake, any other comments? You're good then?
But I didn't want to blindside anybody that we're an agenda item on that meeting, and here we are.
Okay.
So where this money is coming from, I don't know, Jackie.
Yeah, and I would not want to, after knowing that,
Correct.
I don't want to go in front of the redevelopment authority as if we're fighting for,
Maybe a phone call between Aaron and you and I, or whatever, between now and then would be a good idea.
Well, and I think that having this special meeting and talking
Sooner.
through some of this is,
I just
should
felt,
be the responsibility of the HRC.
I just felt I was kind of wearing two
No,
hats here real
I-
quick, and I just didn't want us to look foolish
Right.
at a public meeting.
Right. So I think that's a good idea to schedule it for Friday, and
That's fine.
hopefully you can attend. And if you
I
have
will
to
definitely
if you have to leave the room at some point, we can
That's
do
fine.
that to discuss it. But yeah, I think we want to make sure. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
why I brought it up.
yeah.
That's-
No, I
that-
appreciate
that's- I
it.
didn't want to
Appreciate it. Thank you.
blindside anybody.
So yeah, just confirm before that meeting, so we're not in the
Yes.
discussion, you find out, that's the
Yeah,
funds.
I think
yeah.
that's
Yes.
a good idea.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mark, for.
I'm
thank
just trying
you.
to be forthright.
No, I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to move to the new business. The next item is the visit update from Bill Callahan. Bill, thank you so much for already talking about the CLG information. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any other updates from down south?
No, I think I spoke with it.
Okay, great. Thanks
for having me.
again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Then review and discuss HRC bylaws and rules of procedure.
So maybe I can jump in right here at the beginning. This really is meant for review and discussion, not by me, solely by me. I have found myself looking back at the HRC bylaws and rules of procedure quite often recently. And one of the things that really struck me is just going back to the core and central purpose of the HRC. So on page 1 of Article 1, Section B, going through those A through F components, things like promoting the retention of community character, providing for the designation, protection, preservation, and rehabilitation of historic resources and districts. And then I found myself jumping down to page 2 that sort of goes through the parts of what we're doing. So it spells those things out a little bit more articulately. So at the bottom of page 2, like for instance, letter K, participating in ongoing training to increase and learn about important preservation activities, practices, and tools. I found myself going through that section on that next page on page 2 quite often, because I thought, we really are meeting a lot of the things that are laid out in the Historic Preservation Plan right now. And we as a commission are doing a lot of these things. So when I took a look at the A through K, are we doing every single one of these like today, this week? No, but sometimes things do come in cycles and ebb and flow based on need. So I thought it might be pertinent just to provide the current members with a copy of this to go through and just serve as a reminder for bringing us back to what our central goals are for us as a commission. And as the contact from the city, that is often the coordinator or kind of speaking body and the in-between between the commission and the planning department and the city, I think it's important to review these. and to even make notes as to what we as individuals feel is important within these and can contribute towards, as well as what we can contribute towards as a group and what we need to strive towards. Maybe there's weak areas. So just really attaching this as a discussion and review of these. So thanks.
Yeah, it's good to bring these back. I was just looking at them the other day, of course, when you send them out again, but you know, there are things that we're doing with a lot of stuff that we're not talking about. Maybe we need to bring back to the table more often and discuss further. So yeah, definitely a great thing to keep it looking at all the time to make sure that we're meeting those expectations minimally. So.
And some of that training, the scholarship trainings that will be soon happening for us, those tie into things like Article 3 meetings and the conduct of meetings and just, you know, some of those core pillars of the construction of the group. Becky, do you have any input on this?
No, I mean, we talked a little bit about this. I mean, typically, the first of the year is when a board will revisit their bylaws. That's at least what I've been learning. And so it's always a good idea to look at this, you know, at the beginning of the new year. And so I think this, even though we didn't do that, I didn't do that with you this year, but I think it's good. It's a good idea to maybe rehash some of it, change, make amendments as needed to your bylaws. So I don't know if, Heather, you wanted to make any recommendations or have the group look at these and review them and maybe set a bit of a deadline for, you know, making some comments, and then if there are any amendments or changes necessary, you can change those by the next meeting or have them approved or voted on.
Exactly, Jackie. So I think once, and I know we're missing two or three members today, which, you know, they have a digital copy of these. The hope is if there are things that do need to change, that we could address these. There are many things that we are addressing and updating right now as a whole, as a commission. You know, Matthew spoke to the forms, and so on and so forth. But it's all doable, and the bulk of it is here. So I would say, you know, this might even be an item that we could pick back up in the June meeting, for the June meeting. Matthew, do you have any comments on that?
My first comment is, especially when the folks from NACP, did I invert letters there? NAPC?
NAPC.
Thank you. I think when they come, you'll probably hear that items A, B, and C take up 98% of like most historic review commission's time. I don't think we're not there yet because we don't have a large inventory of historic resources, but you may or may not be surprised to kind of see what other cities don't do on this laundry list simply because there's not time. It's really wonderful that you're breaking this up now and that we're kind of getting in the habit of going through and looking at our bylaws. You know, what struck me is that I think that one of our the requested working sessions that we had with the folks with NAPC was exactly on this, on policies and procedures. And I wondered if we may want to you know, wait to do a review until after we've had that session, especially if it looks like, you know, we might be having those training sessions sometime over the course of the summer. You know, we can, Jackie, as you just mentioned, you know, put for ourselves a January review date to make sure that we're in line with the rest of the city's commissions and boards. That is, unless you might need something kind of on this year's docket, or okay.
No, these are yours to keep. They're actually just posted on our website. There's no council doesn't approve these or anything, this is what governs your board.
Great.
So,
But, there's just looking at the agenda and how much we have kind of ahead of us, I wondered if this is something that we might, complete for this year, but look kind of further into maybe the early fall to do a review and see if any changes are needed.
It does look.
I think you're gonna, I'm sorry, pardon me for speaking up, but I do think you're correct, Matthew. I think NAPC is gonna wanna see these
Right.
for your procedural training.
Mhm.
And that might be a really good opportunity then to have a facilitated conversation with them about
About
the bylaws
how-
and what.
Sure. It does look like these were adopted January 10, 2022. Excuse me. Melinda was the chairperson. So, we're almost halfway through the year. We have plenty going on right now in terms of just picking back up with initiatives and completing initiatives and things of that nature. So maybe a target date is maybe fallish for looking at these to see, once we've had the training, if anything isn't quite meeting the needs of us as a city and as a commission representing it.
Another thought I have is the historic preservation plan. We have an implementation plan.
Mhm.
So we kind of have these are things that we do, and then there's an implementation plan shown the first year. So I think,
Yes.
we need to look at all those and also, work on, really have a session, talk about the implementation plan, what we're going to get done, who's going to do what, is there going to need to be a committee to monitor that? Is there going to be separate committees with different goals? That's something, I was just explaining to someone the other day when they were asking, well, who's going to be in charge of the implementation? And I said the HRC is really, the lead for that.
And
So,
then it's, sure.
so I think maybe this session will, I hate to, we should be working on implementation as soon as possible. So I'd like to try to do those, have that discussion sooner than later.
You're speaking to.
The historic preservation
Right,
plan
and then-
for implementation.
Right. I've been referring to that section in the HPP a lot recently,
Yeah.
especially with the article that's coming out. So,
I guess my
what
thought
would
is,
you
that we
like?
were talking about doing this, what was it just said, Matthew, you said towards July?
Yeah.
Because we really need to kind of dig into it a little bit, but so maybe we
Yeah.
also talk about the implementation plan also
Mhm.
as another task.
Is there an anticipated meeting? Do you want to pick a month for, I can't make a motion as a non, but do you want us maybe set, this is May, like July or August or September as maybe a meeting
Yeah,
where we
yeah.
could
Any-
have that as a topic?
Mark, any thoughts, Matthew?
I wonder if we might have that not as a special meeting, but just as part of our agenda, like a
HRC.
regular agenda. And, I'm
We could prepare for that.
yeah, and I think maybe, Heather and Jackie kind of defer to you because you both have a sense of like how heavy our agenda is and how many items that we have on it. And perhaps if we, over the summer months, if there's a lighter agenda, we can put that in as part of our regular meeting, that we go back to the implementation plan now that it's been ratified by council and start talking about kind of those different components.
Yeah, I agree that looking at the implementation plan and the by year is spelled out in the HPP. So it'd be very easy to, during one of your regularly scheduled meetings, to come and look at those, sections of the plan and start talking about which ones are attainable rather quickly. I like what you said about having maybe some advisory committees and working through that. It's a good idea.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to set everything sitting at this meeting once a
No,
month.
right.
And this would just be specifically for the implementation
Yes.
plan.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a question? So you've got a meeting on Friday about drawing down on in some fashion, utilizing the remaining fundings for the historic building improvement grant. I'm curious, and maybe assuming that since, city council's now adopted the preservation plan, do the internal guidelines for the HBIG sufficient for your conversation on Friday? Or should that be something that's discussed by looking at the preservation plan and seeing what that has to say about that kind of.
Let me make
But-
sure
but-
I'm
but the-
following you.
So the redevelopment authority may have, and HRC may have sufficient internal guidelines for how that money's going to be used. If they do not, I guess I'm asking the question, if they do not, is it possible then just to take the preservation plan, look at that funding and say, okay, here's something we can,
Yeah,
So-
not wait for.
there may be an investment
Oh,
required.
You have,
It's okay.
you have to have
It's
this
a
meeting you're
small
discussing, but also you've got something coming up on Friday that you might be able to, like, say, look, we're already implementing the plan and we're using this funding to do it.
Yeah, so the way that it stands currently, under contract with the city and the redevelopment authority, there is a description as to how the money can be spent. It's up to interpretation, of course, but I would say that if we were going to change some of the intent, that it would work through the city to change the scope. It would be a change of scope. I'm not sure if you'd have to go through council to do that, but I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
Really, it's just a question. I'm not
No,
saying
no,
you need
yeah.
to do this. I'm just saying.
It's an option.
Because I don't know what the,
Mhm.
how that money is currently,
Yeah.
what the legislation says you have to use the money for.
It's a small paragraph in the
Okay.
agreement that states that it has to be used for, residential and small business grant funding, something to that order. I should have brought it with me, I'm sorry. But it's not a lot of heavy criteria. So,
I guess my question is, since we all know about the grant program and why we're talking about it now, the plan gives you a highly defensible
Mhm.
method
Mhm.
to follow that up
Mhm.
with the remaining funding.
Now that it's in place
Now
Now that the
that
plan
it's
is
in
in place.
place.
yeah,
and adopted.
yeah.
But yeah, I think this is good conversation for Friday. That's a really good, piece for Friday, because, yeah, there's what, a third of it, a quarter of it available, and, there's a lot of need, a very wide need, so.
Yeah, let's just bring the implementation plan into that discussion, and we'll see if it applies or not,
Okay.
but I think that's definitely something we can do.
It's a really good problem to have.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really good problem to have.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Anything else in the bylaws procedures? I think we're all straight there? Okay.
So does it sound like maybe we'll revisit this topic should we just pin it to a month where it looks like there's some available time for a regular HRC meeting? Is that
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah, we
hearing?
didn't really
Yeah.
resolve that, but
I said summer months.
But I think we just stressed, everyone review it, and we kind of get ready to have that discussion.
Great.
And we'll definitely plan for it as soon as we can. Okay, then, next item is work session for zoning ordinance Article 7.
Yes. So, recently, sorry, I'm just trying to scroll up to where that is in this very large document. Recently, we've had the need to visit and revisit the zoning ordinance pertinent to I guess, several projects and potential aspects of projects. We've noticed, several of us have noticed that there are sections of the zoning ordinance from the July 2023 edition that are either vague or unclear or could be more specific in articulating sections and needs of the ordinance pertaining to preservation, designation, etc. So you'll see, starting with page 137, Article 7, Section 701. I went through the other day. Feel free to mark this up as you wish or as applies and makes sense to you. Just things like how we look at zoning overlay concepts, where that information is stored, the establishment of the HRC commission, so like what comprises our board, responsibilities. So again, on page 139, this is a prime example of sort of like a check and balance system for us internally, because it reminds us of what we are to be doing and should be doing. We're doing roughly half of these things in my quick calculation in reading these the other day, which is great because that's a lot for a small board. And we had a meeting prior to this that Matthew spoke about pertaining to the forms that represent applications for the HRC. So things like Section 705, the criteria for designation, who is the appropriate applicant? Is it the owner? You know, how does that change from a district to a building, structure, object, or landmark? Things of that nature. So there's a lot here. And again, this is meant for review and discussion, but it might behoove us to have a work session geared towards this, because it's my understanding that this was crafted some years ago and made the transition from what was the name? Before we were a committee, it was a...
It was
The
it's on the
Former
books.
Commission, we were a steering group.
steering group. So thank you.
It was on the books before the steering group. I mean,
Yes.
It was, there was nothing on the zoning maps, but it was an article written to apply when we got there.
And even things, you know, there's in the meeting earlier today, you know, it refers to something going to the central zoning contact, Jake. But it was written in a way where it hasn't been revised since the historic preservation planner role was created. So little things like that, designations, historic districts, it's a pretty thick section. So, yeah.
I love that you're holding our feet to the fire with all these documents. And it's like, yeah, okay. I think this has been a topic almost in every meeting we've had this year, you know, that we need to make these revisions just based on several years of implementation, right?
Mm-hmm.
This makes total sense to me. I mean, I think that we need to have another working group or a special meeting, you know, specifically to look at the ordinance and make recommendations. You know, I'm thinking in terms of what the calendar looks like for council, you know, for the rest of the year. That usually around November and December, you know, things really get consumed by budget, and you know, I think the opportunity to get anything done kind of at that point until the new year is pretty marginal. So you know, I wonder if we can maybe look to our next meeting in June and have another preliminary special session in advance of that meeting. exclusively to look at this and to provide recommendations for a change that we can then go to council or make the recommendations to council to make. Would that be?
And I think you first have to go through the planning commission, then planning commission to city council for any of the zoning amendments.
I think all the more reason to make sure that we can start this kind of as soon as possible and set maybe as a summer goal for ourselves.
And just for dates, well, the planning commission meets on June. Well, if we meet, you'd want the special session in June with the hope to bring it to planning commission and council in July. Is that correct?
Might be a little aggressive.
Okay. Okay.
I think that we'll probably have a preliminary conversation in June. It might, require another working
Another
session after that.
Okay.
I don't know, does council, are they in recess in August? Is that?
I show the Tuesday, the 20th in August, City
Okay.
Planning Commission meets, and then on the 21st, they meet at 7 p.m. that
Okay.
day,
I think that might be more,
20 and 21st.
more of a realistic kind of aspiration. And even then, if we miss those deadlines, or if we need to have more conversations, then
Yeah.
it gives us even, September kind of as a bit of a buffer zone. So, if Mr. Chairperson, you wouldn't mind, I'll make a motion that we have another special meeting of the HRC exclusively to talk about the zoning ordinance, Article 7, and revisions to that.
Okay. Anyone make a second? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. Those opposed, no? Don't have any, so it passes. For that session, as far as scheduling it, I guess the thought is that everyone should be reviewing, getting ready for that session, and then we could talk about it in June, or do we want to set a date, try to set a date right now?
I think that it worked out really well to have the meeting kind of before this regular
Yeah.
standing commission meeting. So
That makes sense.
why don't we shoot to say June the
Next commission meeting is on June 3rd,
okay.
Monday, June 3rd.
So-
And just have it at noon?
HRC.
Yeah, H for HRC. So to meet 10:30, 11 o'clock.
11?
Okay.
Sure. 11 a.m. So we'll send an email reminder about that for the June 3rd, 11 a.m. work session, or preliminary session
Okay.
about the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Sounds good. A lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion on Article 7?
Because, this does mention demolition, and we don't really talk about that much. We talk about it. So on page 143, it talks about, demolition in whole or in part of contributing resources within the district or historic resource. And, things are being, sometimes buildings are torn down in our city without even a side comment,
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Right. For parking lots.
even very recently.
Right. Right. Mhm. Mhm. That topic, that would be, yeah. I think that'll be a good session for us to meet about.
But that would require some kind of process and procedure. First, you'd have a definition
Mhm.
of what is historic, where is the historic district, what buildings would it apply to, and then what the process would be if somebody wanted to tear down a Tudor building on 10th Street.
Yep.
And enforcement.
And then enforcement of that, and then they, people can, amend it, what do you call it when you appeal it?
Appeal it.
Yeah, there's a whole, it's a never-ending It's America. You can appeal everything. That's what we do.
Okay, next on the agenda is the HRC local designation plaque. I think, Matthew, you just handed out some examples or an example?
Yeah, actually, just passing around what Heather provided, I think that you may have worked with Commissioner Meyer to put those together. Is that correct? No? the examples, I thought that was working with Commissioner Meyer to put them together.
We were in dialogue.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Pass that around.
So, yes. So I didn't print 5 copies of the design samples to go around, but it was discussed, I believe, at the last meeting, or in conversation. I can't recall what the format of that was. That the local designation plaque, the HRC local designation plaque, that's something that we could move ahead, right? Not a highly contentious topic, hopefully. You know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but something that we could put into motion such that locally designated properties, such as Matthews and such as the courthouse, that were just nominated and became official last month in April, or was it March? In April as local landmarks, such that if the owners of those properties wanted to purchase a plaque, have a plaque that you know, tells about their properties as being a local landmark for the city of Erie, they could so do so. I just thought that I would kind of put boots to the ground in a sense. I called, Melinda had suggested a local manufacturer that she and, was it Erie downtown, where it was Preservation Erie? She might have worked with Preservation Erie with getting pricing for plaques for their initiatives. I reached out to Lakeshore Industries in Erie to get their current pricing, and I just sort of had a few conversations and put together a few design ideas. So in the first one, design sample 1A, I call this, you have this steel and the logo of the city of Erie. It would be, you know, a local landmark, local object, local structure, whatever that local designation that it would be. The name of the site specifically in bold, the address, and then a few unique tidbits at the bottom pertinent to its historic information and the year that it was designated by us. A different version of this, sample 1B, kind of a crisper look with just the seal, doesn't say City of Erie in bigger letters, goes straight to the local object, site, home, whatever it is, the exact name of it, bigger letters, and again, kind of a brief description at the bottom. For districts, slightly different. This is design sample 2A. At the top, it might say historic district with the district name right below it, and then the specific house name or building name. Again, a few tidbits at the bottom. Maybe it's listed on the National Historic Register, and that's a part of the blurb at the bottom. And again, the year that it was designated by the HRC. And then the same thing, like as was in 1B, this is sample 2B, just the seal, doesn't say City of Erie at the top, just the seal, a few more things in bold, and kind of shifts a lot of the text down towards the bottom. Oh, I forgot I put that one on there. That one might be familiar to some of us. So that might be something like the owner of that home might want hung up on their porch or as something on the entry to the driveway, something of that nature, right? So that's a real life example of one that we just accepted, and this would be 24, not 23. This would be an example of a historic structure, so landmark, structure, district, site, object. So these are just samples that I put together. They could certainly be simplified where we just eliminate this uppermost row and say historic resource, and then below it say what it is specifically. But these are the 5 categories that align with our ordinance and HRC wording. So a little bit to think about.
I'm happy to share my opinion. I prefer the without the city of Erie, and I like the plaque centered,
This one.
like that. However, just something to consider. I don't want to make this a contentious decision, but I really, really like the marking, or the what do they call that? The symbol that's used on the historic preservation plan.
Oh,
It's not the symbol, what do they call that?
logo?
The logo, thank you. The logo, I don't know if you remember it, but it's really a nice design, and it's simple. It might be something to add to the plaque if we wanted to make more.
Them partners.
No, not necessarily that. They did give us the image, but just to show something a little bit different than just like a government seal, and have something a little softer. That's my 2 cents.
and
So what's the graphic then?
Oh, I can try. Can you? Let's see. Let me see if I
Here,
can
do you
pull it
want-
up. It's a logo.
I think I can look it up.
It's a nice logo.
Lakota,
Okay,
right?
so you're just like adding that onto this, so it
Yeah.
looks,
Maybe
it's
not
saying the city's approving this, and also,
I just meant it as a feature, not anything more than that. Just to,
Oh my goodness, this mouse.
I think I have it here.
This mouse is not liking this desk. Do you, this, Jackie,
Yes.
is this it? The lighthouse in the
Yes.
Erie?
Yes.
Something like
So
that.
I thought that was a nice,
Great. Very good. Go.
I mean, that might even be nice on the top with the logo on the very bottom too, just to play around with something. But I don't want to make it more difficult to try. It's a
I do
nice-
like the lighthouse more than the tower.
Fine by me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That would be the last
So,
thing.
something to think about. They did say that we were able, obviously, they gave us the rights and the image to
Okay.
this.
Well, you paid for it.
Something to consider. What's that? Well,
You
we
paid for it.
Yeah, you paid for it.
Well, we paid for part of it.
Yeah. But it might be nice to have that Erie lighthouse
Mhm.
up at the top there, then your text, and then the seal at the bottom,
Of the
which is
city.
a little bit more of a interesting design, something a little bit softer than just stamp, it's the city of Erie.
Well, I know that too, that, please don't hate me that I'm going to say this, but like I think the Water Authority too did like several years ago, they made these special like manhole covers.
Yes.
That are divided into quadrants, and
Mhm.
each has like a piece of, I think one's a lighthouse, the other is
I
maybe the
wanted those
blockhouse.
old ones so bad and I couldn't get a single one.
Or for like the Niagaras in another quadrant, maybe that's something that we can do in the corners, something that's really kind of fundamentally the core of historic Erie. But I think too, would you mind going back to, I don't know. I agree with our director that the one that just focuses on the symbol or the seal of Erie is, that's it. I thought those were pretty lovely.
Yeah.
I like,
Something more like this,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, right.
yes, I do.
So
love
what,
those.
that's
what I
super
would,
cool.
actually, would you
Yeah, those
go
are great. Actually, remarkably good
forward
public
one?
art, by the way.
Yeah.
Great example of public
So
art.
this kind of leads into like this font, and I can get into the technical aspects here in a minute because
Sure.
I have that on the last page. But yeah.
I was thinking that it might be best to remove the text about being listed on the National Register.
Mhm.
It's not our
Mhm.
purview.
Sure.
And even though if they are listed on the National Register, it entitles them to get a a plaque for that. So, we can kind of focus more, I think, on us. I wonder if we might want to replace that with something that speaks to the significance of the place. Say like, this site has architectural
Yeah,
significance. or,
why is it on the
yeah,
listed?
or such and such of important person lived here, important people, or this has a unique design.
George Washington slept here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Something like
I
that.
don't think
But
he got this far north.
replace that in, and
Actually, he got to Waterford,
the only other
but
thing I
not,
struggle with here
there's
is
no evidence of him coming to Erie.
we don't, as the Historic Review Commission, have the authority
He's
to
not
designate something as a landmark. We only make a recommendation to City Council, and it's the city, kind of the city, right, that makes the decision. And I wonder if it's, I don't want to say necessary, but if that's also an opportunity to, kind of reclaim that text and use it for more of the
For
significance
the Historic
or
Review
something.
Commission.
Right, because the seal is going to make it very clear that this is a city landmark. This is something that belongs.
In other words, maximize the information, not just keep saying the City of Erie.
Yeah.
Or say the Historic Review Commission.
Right. Or something.
Process.
Yeah,
something
we
along
could
that
not say
nature.
necessarily say the City of Erie Historic Review Commission, it would just say Historic Review Commission, but it has the stamp of the city on there,
Yeah.
so it's kind of redundant if we use, say both.
Mhm.
The stamp is us, it's
You
Erie.
could just say City of Erie landmark,
Right.
And just-
Something like that. I mean,
and that would leave you more room for additional text.
yeah, like I don't think that you need to include the address either, or the location, because it'll be
On,
right. Exactly. It's less communicating location, more communicating importance. And for the district ones, I think that it would be beneficial to have something that, says that it's a contributing property, a contributing house.
See, ours is
contributing
like
I was
building.
pack as a
gonna say, when
district.
I looked at the
Right.
district, I mean, it could be 10 buildings in one.
Exactly.
One
It can
district,
be very
right.
different.
Yeah, could be-
Lots of variables.
And
so it would be
And
easier to
that's
say
what I was-
1501 to 1511, 1509 state,
Uh-huh.
but it would be more difficult in the future if it was multiple pieces.
Because imagine the intent is to have it so that if somebody in the district wanted one on their property, they could put it on. But likely there would also be some sort of district sign, either like a separate marker, that's kind of freestanding, independent, or something even larger than that identifies that this is a historic district. It's really like tailored to the district itself. But I don't know if I'm interpreting this a bit too far, or
No, I mean, I was just coming up with separate ideas. I mean,
Yeah.
as the person that's doing design development on this, and like I kind of took that on because I felt that that's something that we could move forward with. And maybe it's something that we revise in the future, but just to get something going where we can celebrate the ones that have been nominated and,
Yes.
gone through the process. But in line with what you were saying, so, right, like here, in this one, in this district, like this is 2A and this is 2B. And they say the same thing, but yet they don't. They describe it in different ways.
Right.
And so I thought, well, it may or may not be, this house in this district may or may not be listed on the National Historic Register. So, this section right here, in truth, might not be a part of most of them.
right.
But in the off chance that something did go through that very difficult process, maybe we do give it the honor of it being described here. And
think
I
you need
do, no,
I don't, I was
No.
gonna suggest the same thing
Sep-
Matthew did. This is the
Separate.
City of Erie's landmark. I think the city should own it. This plaque is something you're gonna, help people get to. They can get their own National Register plaque if it's listed in the National Register. There's enough confusion amongst the two
okay,
anyway.
okay. And
I mean, it's nice to be,
that's
it's
great.
nice to be able to say, hey, look, this has
Okay.
got multiple designations. It's that historic.
Right, that's what I was
but
thinking.
See,
I
packet
second,
we do have a plaque for that. Like,
Sure.
we have a
you
national.
already
Sure.
have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've
Right,
gone through
yeah.
that process. But I do think like this is where each one will be specific, and so the owner of the property or the applicant would be working with the historic preservation planner as the central contact with the foundry and with the pourer and the design team. So some of that information, as long as it fits the criteria on
So I think you
That
generically just put in a paragraph,
page.
description of designation,
Uh-huh.
work with the historic planner to
Sure.
determine, because
The
everyone's going to be
language.
differently, so we don't have to tell them anything there. It needs to be some type of description
Mm-hmm.
that they would determine, because they're going to make the plaque.
Sure.
But it'd be great if they can consult with you.
Sure.
On it, so it doesn't just say, something that doesn't make sense.
Right, I like vanilla ice cream.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so on that note, the manufacturer did say that it's about a 7-week lead time. And I'm happy to, notify the HRC of what the plaque is going to say and kind of like just let people know ahead of time in case anyone has any input. But I'm happy to work with each of the applicants. There's a huge price jump between aluminum and bronze. There's a $175 flat fee to duplicate the city seal. So even if we do keep it on there but move it to a different location, that's an upfront cost to set it up for design and pour. And maybe we need to revise it in the future, but it's something that we could start the initiative for and get the process going so that we do have a few in the city that we can celebrate now.
And we
Yes,
wouldn't
I do
recommend a
think that's important.
manufacturer. We couldn't say use a company. I think we would have to say, here's companies that are, that can do this work. I mean, we know they do great work, I know that.
That
And
could
probably
be-
most of the plaque work in the region.
That
But
could
the city couldn't designate and say, go to this person and do it.
I think that like a design standard, we would have to have a design standard that we could set up in like Adobe Illustrator or some graphic design software where I could meet, maybe a few of them get made at Lakeshore Industries, and maybe Lakeshore Industries and I have a great dialogue, and they maybe are nice and local and help us figure out that process, and hopefully they get the majority of the contracts. But like you said, just like when something goes out to bid, there is no
Yeah,
control
Katie
over
can't
where
say,
those
go to this
materials.
person, yeah.
Yes. And here are a couple samples. We all know that one. That's what Lakeshore had sent. So that would be like a bronze look. This is one that Lakeshore had sent. That's on aluminum with a single color front that looks like it's black. The text at the bottom must be 5/8 inch or larger. So there is a minimum text size and a few different techie things with these that she spoke to.
I like what it says.
You do?
Yes, it's about the riparian
Riparian
buffers.
zone.
Sorry.
And I think that plaque might be 18 by 24 if I had to guess
That's a
the
big one.
size. This one I found from Massachusetts, and it's blue, the navy blue, the color of the city, on bronze, and I really liked this. It also has 4 corner florets. So I thought that color combination, maybe the blue on aluminum or blue on bronze, could tie into the city and some of our colors and like South Park Row. I see a street sign out that window right there. That's that dark blue color. So just some food for thought. But the sky's the limit. I do think there does need to be some sort of decision if we do decide to go forward with these on design,
Size.
materials, size, and then with that, like color and font would go into the design. So
So every time you get a new plaque and you use the city seal, there's an upcharge of $175
No,
or just one
just
time?
one time.
Oh, to make the mold, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
just to make it to size. It's just an upfront one-time fee. Yeah,
Got it,
at the
okay.
very beginning. And
And
I
you,
would
you
ans-
can see on this one how if you have the seal up top, you're left with
all that
quite a lot of
space.
space on either side.
Mhm.
So more of a linear or horizontal design would be at least more space effective.
I think my picture would fit.
And the pricing, like if I go back to here, like it seemed the 12 by 15 might be about the right size. I mean, this is an 11.5-inch tall sheet of paper, so to have anything that would be, if it's landscape orientation, 12 inches on a building by 15 really isn't that big. given the scale and size of most of the buildings. So if we picture the courthouse, if someone were to get an 8 by 10 inch size plaque, that would be smaller than the sheet of paper on the federal courthouse or on Matthews Home. So kind of leveraging like scale and purpose with price and longevity. Like it all has to kind of work in flux. It seemed to me that they had done a lot of this size and this size, but
So, what would you like from us to move forward?
The tough part is we're not graphic experts. I mean, we all have an opinion. I have an opinion of all this. But
Yeah, but
What if
there's
you
no
do-
disputing taste, right? Like, and you know, for our purpose too, I'm kind of envisioning this that we would, you know, give a thumbs up at some point to the plaque,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
really our purview then is how the plaque is attached to whatever it is, you know, and ensuring that they're not doing any kind of damage to the building by putting it in. You know, we'd go back and say, put it in the mortar joints, not the brick, or put it in, you know, but for
Good point.
I guess for your purpose, kind of what would you like from us to be able to move this forward?
It seems like at a forthcoming meeting, maybe by a forthcoming meeting, our department could look at how this could be arranged to meet the criteria of all 5 designations, right? We have 5 designations, so maybe for the June meeting, we'll come back with a revised design and make sure the design is as it sounds like might meet our needs, and then that the content either, I guess the content would be, part of the content would be decided in real time as the projects open up, but part of the content, like right up here,
Heather?
the top, this part, I think we need to decide when we decide on the design itself, whether or not we need to have something that separately says historic district, structure, landmark, object, or whether we just say one overarching category, like historic property.
It'd probably be simpler just to have one, and then somewhere on it, there maybe in the text say, you know, historic site, historic object, historic building, something like that.
I was just going to add that since we are on the revisions anyways of forms, it might be helpful just to associate another plaque form with this. Something that, this is the design, okay, it's a district, this is the text, and then like on a second page, you would show the design and show a layout, and then you would ask the applicant or the designee or whatever to fill in what they propose, and then it would have to go through us or the HRC. Does it have to go through the HRC for approval, or just to go administratively go through Heather?
I think
Can
just
I,
have
can I,
that.
can I make a suggestion that
Or
other
this is-
communities have done?
Okay.
This body could, one way I've seen this managed before is that this body could sanction a design, format, and content, and then work with external partners to promote and perhaps even help subsidize the cost. So like work with Preservation Erie, the County Historical Society, I'm just making stuff up. And that way, Heather doesn't have to, except to the extent maybe she would want to be consulted. It becomes its own thing at that point. So there's a City of Erie sanctioned format, style, content, and then there's other folks that can help. And that does a couple of things. It does take a little bit of the work off the city, but also creates a legitimate partnership with other entities, if that's the way you wanted to look at it.
So yes, the framework of it, I think, does need to be decided. In my opinion, I don't know as though, it seems as though we should be giving recognition to our local designations. And it seems like this is something that we could do rather soon. It doesn't require $20,000 of a plan and meeting certain things on certain websites and data input. It doesn't require that. So I was anticipating that this is something we could just boil down,
Yep.
make really simple, that we could all give the thumbs up to, so that the people that are, the entities that are designated could have something that really gives them celebration and ties into our mission. I do think that funding and pairing that is really something to look forward to. I just don't know how soon we could put that together.
Oh, no, this is down the road. This is, no, I
When
don't.
something comes
I don't,
up.
I'm not,
Yeah, I
no,
think we should
by
vote
no
on this.
means, no, because this is something you can do right now. But,
Right.
but as the program, I mean, you don't have any designated properties right now. So, I'm sorry,
We have two.
I did know that. I did know that.
2.5.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
but as the program grows and people become aware, and then you'd have an opportunity. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest that,
Sure.
but you should wait and plan this out a little bit. No.
But yes, and that would ease the burden of that $654 plaque. And maybe there's other ways that we could help to offset those costs in the future as other parts of the program grow.
I think that to Director Fry's point, this should not come back before us. Like, the installation of these plaques can be something that is managed by staff. That I have full faith and confidence that you'll be able to do it. I do think an information sheet, for applicants will be helpful. But
We'll keep it simple,
yeah, exactly
make
that.
it lovely.
So why don't we do this then? Why don't we? I think you've gotten some of our feedback on design, on some context. If you have any questions kind of over the next month, just reach out to, I don't know, us as you need.
Great.
And
Yeah.
in June, then we can ratify what the final design looks
Okay.
like and, give our launch program.
I
Great.
do like
Okay.
the Land Lighthouse because if I'm not mistaken, it's the oldest structure
It is.
in
In the-
Erie,
yeah.
in the city of
The
Erie.
city, yeah.
Is that correct? Other than maybe the,
I think that the
The
Dickinson
Dickinson's Tavern.
Tavern,
Tavern
yeah,
might
be
that might be
the
the oldest, but I
right,
know
but
that.
still,
Or-
I still think the Land Lighthouse is indicative of a structure as opposed to saying a
Yes.
picture of the peninsula. You know what I mean? Or the water.
Right.
Right.
You know, the lake. I think you want really like.
Erie is the only city in the Commonwealth with a lighthouse.
Wow.
And our-
So,
We're the only city in the Commonwealth with a lighthouse.
Yes.
Erie.
Really?
I think, yes.
Lighthouses.
you have three, the
Yeah.
only ones in the city of Erie.
But I-
boundaries.
I think
True.
that's
Yeah,
one of the
the Land
reasons.
Lighthouse is understated in how important it is.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it is.
Right.
I've ever been inside of it. It's very cool.
I think also one of the reasons I gravitate towards the blue background.
Because of the water.
Yeah,
Sure, I like that
the
symbolic.
I like
Lake Erie is
blue, too.
omnipresent, and
It's right on
we
Lake
are.
Erie. Yeah.
And
You have
it's
a lake board.
different than the other plaques that are going up.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
It
and
stands out.
I think in that way,
You've seen that one, what's that one on Peach Street on the other side of the bridge? They just put it up for, I think, was it Britton Funeral Home? Isn't it like a light blue?
Oh, really?
Because that really stands out. And I just noticed that one. That
Where
was just,
is
that
it?
just came out.
But I like the blue
It's
because
on
of the water.
Peach Street
Peach.
on the
Just pick a color. Pick a color blue.
south side, no, I'm sorry, west side.
Okay.
But it's on the south side of the bridge,
And
west
what,
side of the street.
what cross street? What bridge?
Peach Street. This is Peach Street, the bridge, the Red River Bridge, the
Okay.
overpass.
Got it. I'll take a drive.
Mark taking minutes.
I'm sorry.
Because it could be
Are
a
you
darker
taking
blue.
minutes?
I said we've discussed this about getting the plaque.
Okay.
You know, and I mean, I don't know what exactly we didn't decide other than go ahead and do it.
Okay.
So,
Going back just
said
to kind
HRC
of like
plaque.
the, any thoughts on price and whether or not we as a commission
Give
would
them
be
the plaque.
giving them the option between aluminum and bronze or sizes, so does anyone,
I
do we
think
have
it's gonna be up to the
input?
property owner as to how much investment they wanna make, I'm thinking. I mean, do we just tell them, go ahead and buy a bronze plaque?
I want bronze.
Actually, looking at this from the perspective of what our charge is as a commission, I would actually lean away from bronze because it discolors over time and it has the potential to actually discolor the building that it's on too. And considering our weather and considering how well aluminum holds up with an excessive amount of moisture, I think that's probably the best thing to do within the context of preserving the building that the plaque would be on and not doing any kind of damage or further damage or discoloration to it.
We ultimately put ours on the inside. We had a big debate about, our historic, National Historic. We were afraid that people were going to steal it no matter how we mounted it on the wall. Unless we could have bolted it into the stone, and then put the florets to cover that. So it could be, people would back that out and sell that at the scrapyard.
Right, and that,
And we just didn't want that to happen, so we bolted it on the inside of our building.
that,
Which is not where we would have preferred it on the outside, but we just couldn't do it.
that goes back a little bit, Mark, to what I was actually thinking about when I came up with this one, where it tells the house name and the address and street name, such that there would be no question where that plaque belonged. It
Mhm.
belonged at 17
Yeah.
Marblehead Street or Cherry Street, right?
Yes.
So that was one of the things
Because then
I
we
had
thought we would put it up
considered.
really high, get a ladder to go get it.
So Heather, you're going to take our input and just put something, a final email together so we could approve at the next meeting? Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Thank
Okay.
you for
Yes.
bearing with us.
great.
That's fine.
Okay.
We put it right inside of our doorway when you first walk in, but it's
And
in.
that-
It looks nice, Mark.
Thank you.
That was
It
it
does
for the
look nice.
agenda. Is there any other items? We had another question mark there. Anything else?
I have two things. Happy Preservation Month, because May is Preservation Month. And then the other question I had too, and this is again speaking from a point of ignorance, having recently joined the commission, but is there any sort of process within the city where commissions have their photo taken annually? I know that some cities kind of have that. I know that the state does that as well for its boards, that every year on a specific date, usually in June, they get together and have their photo taken. Is that something that occurs here? Or
Have a what taken? I'm sorry.
photo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware of. However, when the EAC, the Environmental Advisory Council, was formed, we did have a press conference and introduced those new members, but that was because it was a new, a new board. That doesn't mean that we couldn't start something.
I know it's kind of on the very periphery of what our mission is, but it seems like it might be something nice to start, because it's always nice to see, old photos of Erie Council and them in session. That way you're actually able to put faces to names about folks
And
that
we
are
could-
making decisions.
We could post that on our website too. Your names are there with your titles and we could have that on the website as well, so. Sure.
Sounds good. That's just a good idea. Sure.
I will.
If you pick a date, there's so many photographers in PACA, we'll supply a photographer.
Just tell us,
And they'll
give us a little
professionally do
advance
it.
notice.
If you,
so we
whatever
can-
you decide. Whatever you decide.
we can come dressed for the occasion. But no, thank you for that. If there's nothing else, I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Me.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And Bill, thanks again for
Thanks for
coming
having me.
today.
Thanks for
It was a
having me.
great discussion.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.